Good morning. Bonjour à tous. This press conference is being held in Ottawa on Thursday, May 23rd. I'm the moderator, Greg Quinn with Market News International. With us today are senators to discuss a report by the Committee on Fisheries and Oceans about management of the country's seal populations. I do have an important health and safety announcement to read first. To prevent disruptive and potentially harmful audio feedback incidents that can cause injuries, we remind all in-person participants to keep their earpieces away from all microphones at all times. When you are not using your earpiece, please have it face down on the middle of the sticker for this purpose that you will see on the table. Please consult the cards on the table for guidelines to prevent audio feedback incidents. These measures are in place so that we can protect the health and safety of all participants, including the interpreters, and conduct our business without interruption. Thank you all for your participation. With that, senators, please go ahead. Allez-vous.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you to everyone who's joined us here today, either here in Ottawa or from elsewhere in the country and abroad. My name is Senator Fabian Manning. I proudly represent the province of Newfoundland and Labrador and serve as chair of the Senate Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans. Today, after examining Canada's seal populations for over a year, the committee is releasing its report, Sealing the Future. This report is our urgent call to action to secure a viable future for Canada's seal industry. A future that balances a revitalised and thriving seal products industry with a sustainable harvest, well-managed seal populations, and healthy ocean ecosystems. The committee believes these goals are compatible and achievable, with renewed and sustained political will and leadership. We are therefore making 9 recommendations to the Government of Canada, which we will touch on shortly. The report's findings and recommendations are based on testimony from 60 witnesses, information gathered and knowledge shared with us during the fact-finding mission and public hearings in Newfoundland and Labrador last fall. One of the committee's key findings is that the commercial seal harvest and seal products industry in Canada are on the brink of collapse. They have been crippled by decade-old bans on the importation of commercial seal products. Bans, I might add, fueled by lies about the seal harvest. More than 30 countries around the world have issued import bans, including the entire European Union. Because of these bans, the price and demand for Canadian seal products like pelts, meat, oil, and craft products plummeted, and with them, Canada's entire seal industry. Multiple witnesses described the import bans as devastating to the livelihoods, economies, and well-being of remote, coastal, and Indigenous communities. Stephen Lonsdale of the Kikitani Inuit Association testified that poverty and suicide rates increased dramatically in northern and Inuit communities where the seal harvest is a critical source of income. Today, when harvesters can sell their seals that they catch, the price they fetch doesn't cover the bare minimum, like gas and vessel insurance. Meanwhile, artists struggle to source materials for their craft and face more challenges when trying to sell their work. We heard directly from these people during our study on the ground in Newfoundland and Labrador. They feel utterly neglected in Ottawa. The committee also heard that traditional knowledge about seals and the transfer of skills is at risk because of the diminished harvest and the stigma associated with it. Without a doubt, persistent propaganda about Canada's seal industry has been instrumental in creating that stigma, inspiring the import bans, and decimating the products industry. These lies still continue today. They are primarily spread by established, well-funded, and loud animal welfare organisations, many of which are charities and non-profits. They are taking our tax dollars to vandalise an industry of incalculable social, economic and cultural value. It's time for Canada to address this head-on. The seal industry cannot be allowed to drown. There is too much at stake. So we are proposing concrete ways the federal government can toss the industry a lifeline and be its champion. Recommendation 7 of the report calls on the government to move quickly to ensure the commercial seal harvest is economically viable. Recommendation 9 urges the government to create and roll out campaigns to promote Canadian seal products, the removal of trade barriers, and the development of new markets. We need to expose Canadians and consumers abroad to a more fulsome and accurate picture of the seal harvest. And we should punish those who deliberately amplify falsehoods and distort the facts. That's why Recommendation 6 calls on the government to lead the creation of an anti-misinformation and anti-disinformation campaigns for the seal industry. And in Recommendation number 4, we call for changes to the Income Tax Act so that registered Canadian charities and non-profits will lose their tax-exempt status if they participate in spreading lies about the seal industry. If what's happened to the seal industry had happened to any other major Canadian industry, Ottawa would be jumping all over to defend it. This industry deserves as much support and promotion as Canadian beef, chicken, and pork. The government has no time to waste. Continued indifference and inaction on this important file will have dire consequences for many communities and for the long-term management of seal species, which Deputy Chair Senator Busson will speak to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Manning. My name is Bev Busson, Senator from British Columbia. As you'll notice, 4 of our report's recommendations are related specifically to improving seal science and research and implementing a seal population management strategy. That's because our committee was stunned by the enormous research and knowledge gaps that Fisheries and Oceans Canada had regarding 8 of the country's seal species and how they interact with marine life. I'll give you a key example. One of our initial questions at the outset of the study was, what effect are seal populations having on Canada's fisheries? With a tiny seal harvest, seal populations are much larger than they were even a few decades ago. The committee heard lots of anecdotal evidence that these booming seal populations are eating away the fish stocks and harming our oceans ecosystems. Morley Knight, a fisheries consultant and former Assistant Deputy Minister of Fisheries Policy at DFO, told us he estimates that seals eat 22 times as much fish as the commercial fisheries harvest. At a time when the global food supply is at risk, this should be of great concern. But when the committee questioned the DFO about this issue, we couldn't get detailed answers or hard scientific evidence. The department did confirm that gray seals are harming groundfish stock recovery in the South Gulf of St. Lawrence. But elsewhere in Atlantic Canada, the department said it didn't know the effect of seals were having on the fish stocks, or they considered the impact to be comparable to those of other predators. Given that the anecdotal evidence and Indigenous knowledge point to the contrary, this level of uncertainty and inaction by the department responsible for this file is unacceptable. Ecological data on seal populations is sorely lacking, and much of what exists is outdated, especially in my province of British Columbia. The committee was unable to draw any conclusions about the seal populations on Canada's Pacific coast in its report because there were little or no data to draw from. What we did conclude is that much more and better seal science is urgently needed on Canada's Arctic, East, and West coasts. The government must quickly gain a better understanding of the role seals play in the ocean food webs. Otherwise, it will become more and more challenging to manage marine life, especially in the context of climate change. That's why our report in Recommendation 2 and 3 calls on the government to rapidly develop a more robust and state-of-the-art marine and fisheries research capacity, and to bolster collaboration concerning seal science and research. The committee firmly believes that Indigenous knowledge can and must play a key role in this endeavor. Inuit knowledge about seals spans centuries, and we heard from witnesses that Indigenous communities and harvesters are eager to collaborate and share what they know. So we urge the government to start incorporating Indigenous knowledge into its studies of fisheries and policy development. Further to that, certain industries have dedicated centers of excellence. The Lobster Institute at the University of Maine is a great example. Its mission is to foster collaboration in support of a sustainable and profitable lobster industry. A seal-focused institute located in or affiliated with a Canadian post-secondary institution could act as a national champion for research on the seal industry. To that end, Recommendation 8 calls on the government to begin creating a seal study center of excellence. Finally, I want to address the report's first recommendation because it's crucial and it connects all the others. To effectively and sustainably manage Canada's seal populations in the long term, the government needs a roadmap. Our study demonstrates that right now, DFO is directionless on this file. So the committee strongly recommends that the federal government urgently implement a seal population management strategy no later than 6 months from today. And we're not joking around when we say urgently. As Senator Manning said, livelihoods are at stake. A national strategy must incorporate the best available science and Indigenous knowledge and use innovative technologies and scientific methods. To reach this goal, it will be essential for the federal, provincial, and territorial and Indigenous governments to work together and with other stakeholders, especially seal harvesters and fishers. Thank you very much, and over to Senator Aucoin.
Merci beaucoup. Mon nom, c'est Réjean Aucoin et je suis sénateur de Chitican en Nouvelle-Écosse. L'industrie du phoque revêt une grande importance pour les communautés francophones de la côte est du Canada et du Québec. En tant que sénateur de la Nouvelle-Écosse, je suis heureux de vous parler de ce rapport. Ce document lance un appel urgent à l'action de la part du comité et veut assurer, en vue d'assurer un avenir viable à l'industrie canadienne du phoque. Cet avenir passe par une industrie florissante des produits dérivés du phoque, une chasse aux phoques durable, une bonne gestion des populations de phoques et des écosystèmes océaniques sains. Aujourd'hui, l'industrie canadienne des produits dérivés du phoque est sur le point de s'effondrer. La chasse aux phoques n'est plus ce qu'elle était. Pour la majorité des chasseurs, elle n'est même plus économiquement viable. Pêche et Océan ne gère pas les populations de phoques de manière active ou en s'appuyant sur des données probantes. Les décideurs politiques ne comprennent pas bien le rôle que jouent les populations dans les écosystèmes océaniques ou même l'impact qu'elles ont sur les stocks de poissons. À la lumière de ces observations et d'autres encore, le rapport formule 9 recommandations concrètes. Tout d'abord, le comité recommande au gouvernement de prendre sans délai des mesures pour soutenir la revitalisation de l'industrie canadienne des produits dérivés du phoque. Autrement dit, il doit veiller à ce que la chasse commerciale au phoque soit économiquement viable. Depuis 20 ans, l'industrie est paralysée par les interdictions internationales comprenant l'importation de produits dérivés du phoque chassés à des fins commerciales. Cette situation a eu de graves répercussions sur les communautés autochtones éloignées et côtières. Pour y remédier, le comité recommande au gouvernement de lancer des campagnes de promotion et de développement de nouveaux marchés pour les produits canadiens dérivés du phoque. les interdictions frappent ces produits et résultent en grande partie de la diffusion d'informations trompeuses et inexactes sur la chasse aux phoques au Canada. L'information qui continue d'être propagée aujourd'hui par les organisations de protection des animaux et d'autres, y compris des organismes de charité et à but non lucratif. Gilles Thériault, de l'Association des chasseurs de phoques intra-Québec, a déclaré lors de son témoignage que l'histoire et l'industrie du phoque est marquée par l'intimidation. Pour pallier à ce problème, le comité recommande au gouvernement de mener une campagne nationale de sensibilisation, ainsi que des campagnes de lutte contre la mésinformation et la désinformation au sujet de l'industrie de la chasse aux phoques et des produits dérivés de cette industrie. Nous demandons également que des modifications soient apportées à la loi sur l'impôt et le revenu, afin que les organismes de bienfaisance et à but non lucratif enregistrés au Canada perdent leur exemption fiscale s'ils participent à la diffusion mensongère au sujet de l'industrie du phoque. Les populations de phoques doivent être bien gérées pour maintenir l'équilibre et l'écosystème océanique. Mais à l'heure actuelle, le gouvernement fédéral ne dispose pas des connaissances et des données nécessaires pour s'acquitter de cette responsabilité. À cette fin, le comité demande au gouvernement de mettre en œuvre, dans un délai de 6 mois, une stratégie de gestion efficace et durable des populations de phoques. Le gouvernement devrait également mettre en place une capacité de recherche marine et halieutique solide et à la fine pointe de la technologie et accroître considérablement la collaboration dans le domaine de la science du phoque. Le comité croit fermement que ces efforts doivent tenir compte du savoir autochtone. Enfin, le comité demande au gouvernement de commencer à mettre sur pied un centre d'excellence pour les études sur les phoques, qui se ferait le champion de l'industrie, ce dont elle a grandement besoin. Le comité s'attend à une réponse rapide à ces recommandations et il a bien hâte de voir ce que fera le gouvernement. Nous exhortons donc le gouvernement fédéral de mettre en œuvre des recommandations le plus rapidement possible. Des communautés et des économies locales dépendent de mesures que prendra le gouvernement. Merci beaucoup. Je cède maintenant la parole au sénateur Brian Francis.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Aucoin. Wiliaksik Boog, good morning. I'm pleased to join you from Ottawa, which is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Réjean Aucoin Nation. I will conclude our presentation today by touching on the significance of the seal harvest to Indigenous peoples in Canada. My own father used to harvest seals off the Magdalen Islands and the Gulf of St. Lawrence. So this is an issue that does touch me personally, and I am honored to have participated in this important study. Inuit and First Nations have harvested seals for subsistence purposes for thousands of years. The traditional harvest has been central to our cultures and way of life for generations, far longer than the commercial harvest. The relationship between our communities have with sealing is deep, meaningful, and respectful, and something that should be preserved. The important connection may not be well understood across this country or globally, and certainly not by anti-sealing groups who mischaracterize it as a barbaric activity. The harvest is performed with great respect and gratitude for the animal, and in exchange, no part of it is wasted. Seal meat is an accessible and important source of protein in remote areas where non-traditional food is unaffordable or unattainable. Seal oil is a source of omega-3s, healthy fats, and seal pelts keep people warm and adequately clothed in harsh climates. The sale of these products is also an important source of income for remote and coastal communities where commercial opportunities are limited. It's how they provide for their families. The seal harvest is therefore an urgent matter of food security, self-sufficiency, and economic survival. Just as crucially, it supports cultural continuity and the social and economic well-being of Indigenous communities. In the mid-20th century, the federal government forced Inuit communities to relocate to the high Arctic. The devastating effects of this program continue to be felt today. But seal harvesting allowed Inuit to maintain a connection to their culture, which in turn contributes to the retention of languages and customs. Indigenous elders and harvesters hold a tremendous amount of knowledge about seals and the seal harvest. This knowledge is both underutilized and at risk because of the stigma that has been attached to the harvest now for decades. Senator Manning spoke about the need to fight strategically coordinated misinformation. But it's equally important that Canada improve general education about seal populations, the seal harvest, and the seal products industry. Recommendation 5 of the report calls on the federal government to work on a national education campaign of this nature, and to do so in collaboration with Indigenous governments and organizations, local communities, and sealing industry members. Education is paramount. It fosters understanding and respect, it creates opportunities, and it builds bridges. We are hopeful that a greater understanding of the seal harvest will contribute to the revitalization of this important industry. Thank you. Will Allen will now be pleased to take your questions.
Thank you, merci. Note, we have 3 journalists in the room, and given the nature of the topic, 6 journalists on the line. We'll start in the room as per usual. Matteo Similaro, National Observer.
Hi, thank you. I know you mentioned the EU ban. Can you speak a little bit about how Canada should approach the markets to really export seal and find a kind of consumer base for seals? You know, should they lobby the EU, or should they look to other jurisdictions to promote seal products?
Thank you for the question. We believe you should do both. We believe that we need to lobby the EU. There is countries within the EU that participate in harvests of animals themselves. So we believe that there's a common interest there. We also believe that there's opportunity with new markets. Between 2017 and 21, Cambodia and China were top importers of Canadian sealskins. Japan, Hong Kong, and Vietnam remain Canada's biggest seal product and export markets, according to DFO. So there's opportunity there, but it has to be driven by the Canadian government. These are international discussions. We talk about international trade, even with our partners in the United States, and the opportunities, with the 350 million people on our doorstep. So, we believe there's a lot of opportunity out there. We just need to be able to push that further down the line and to make sure that all our discussions that we hold in regards to developing markets, that the sealing industry is part of that discussion.
Perfect, thank you. Can you just explicate the recommendation to remove the tax exemption for NGOs that campaign against seal harvest? Is it just to promote when they're promoting falsehoods about the seal harvest, or is it just when they campaign against, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
When they campaign against the seal harvest in general?
Yep. Well, again, we believe that they're, because they're non-profit and charities, they're receiving tax benefits from Canadian taxpayers. And they're going out vilifying a Canadian industry. Those things don't add up. I don't think that it would happen in any other country, but we allow it to happen here. And we've heard from people right across the country, involved in this industry, who believe that that's wrong. And that's where our recommendation comes from. I mean, if they're going to go out and continue to vilify the sealing industry in Canada, continue to lie about the sealing industry in Canada, they definitely should not be receiving a tax benefit to do that from Canadian taxpayers.
Fraser Needham, APTN, do you have a question?
Okay. This is for Senator Francis or anybody, but maybe Senator Francis. You talked a bit about the what the seal hunt or the industry means for Indigenous communities. What Which communities, I guess, they're largely Inuit, I would imagine, have been affected the most, and how much potential do you see if the industry is revived?
So 90% of Canada's seal harvest occurs in Nunavut. So obviously they would be affected tremendously by that. But any communities of our Indigenous people that have harvested seals since time immemorial would be affected one way or another by what happened to them, not only from a food aspect but also cultural aspect, and it's important that that be reversed now, and that we start looking not to villainize those that are harvesting proper methods in terms of seals, and it's just another process.
And I guess you see there is a big potential, I guess, for economically for these communities, I guess, if it is revived?
Absolutely. To regain what they lost, and it will take some time, but certainly now's the time to get back on track.
Yeah, maybe just as a follow-up, I'm sure people have lots of answers on this, but maybe if you could specify some of the false narratives, I guess, or misinformation and lies that have really that you believe have harmed the industry.
Turn over to you, sir.
Well, we could be here all day, but we won't do that. But just as an example, there's a widespread misconception that baby seals are harvested in Canada. It hasn't happened since 1987. It's illegal in Canada to harvest harp and hooded seal pups. But when you go out and you see the anti-sealing propaganda, they show harvesting of seal pups. It's a lie. It's a falsehood. And they, sell this message. They reap the monetary awards of selling that message. They decimate an industry that's very important to our country. The use of years ago, when they used the hecapic to kill seals. Seals are not killed with the hecapic anymore. And these are just two examples, and that are part of the propaganda campaign against the industry. And there's more, but the fact is that I believe, and our committee believes, that we're at a point now where we need to start putting out the facts and the truth about this industry to combat the lies and the misinformation that's out there. We're not naive to think that that's not an enormous challenge. It is. I've had the opportunity to travel to the European Union, and it's an uphill battle, but we have a decision to make. Right here within our own country, we have the ecosystem, off the coast of our country, that is in dire straits. In many cases, the fishery, the cod fishery in Newfoundland, as an example. So it's not just about the seals; it's about the entire ecosystem of the oceans that we benefit so much from in this country.
Kirsten Williams, Nunatsiaq News. Do you have a question? No. Okay. We will turn to the call then. I guess I could remind you to make sure your background noise is appropriate for this call, and we will start with Gary Keane, Saltwire Network. Please go ahead.
Hi. Good morning. Thank you for doing this and taking our questions. Obviously, when you started out doing this report, you knew there was an issue with the seal industry and seal population, I should say, and you said you were surprised, with the lack of knowledge that DFO has about seals. Did DFO give you any indication of why they found it so difficult to know enough about seals? I guess that's the question. How did they explain to you why they don't know enough about seals to adequately manage them?
Thank you. I'll take that question. We spent a lot of time with a number of witnesses from DFO, and from our estimation, we just heard that it wasn't a priority for the department to focus on the seal populations, despite the fact that there is so much evidence that, apart from what you see, that the seal population is decimating the fish stocks. They are predators of opportunity and will go from one food chain to another in order to sustain themselves. And the estimates of the seal population on the East Coast alone are a moderate estimation of 7 million seals. And if you just do the math on what they would eat, it's astounding that the department hasn't spent more time trying to link and decide with science how we can better manage our ecosystem. Thank you.
Okay, so it was a matter of not willing to do it versus the challenges that they faced in doing it?
Well, you may ask them what the reason behind it is, but we just found in their answers that they had no science, very little science and research, and just felt that it was not a priority.
Thank you, merci. Et ensuite, Isabelle Laloz, Radio-Canada.
Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui, bien sûr.
Oui. Alors, ma question, si c'est possible, j'aimerais avoir une réponse en français. J'aimerais savoir si vous considérez que Pêche et Océan Canada a échoué dans sa gestion des populations de phoques.
Bien, échouer, c'est un gros mot, mais c'est certainement que Pêche et Océan n'a pas fait tout le travail qu'il aurait pu faire à cause, comme ma collègue a très bien expliqué, à cause qu'il ne considérait pas que c'était une priorité. Et peut-être qu'au cours des années, les populations de phoques ont augmenté au point où maintenant, je pense que tout le monde réalise qu'il y a une question de gestion qui doit être étudiée. Merci pour la question.
Pouvez-vous revenir un petit peu sur le manque de données? Ça a été expliqué surtout par votre collègue en anglais, mais j'aimerais avoir une explication en français. Là, vous dites avoir été stupéfait là, par le manque de données. Donc, parlez-moi un peu de ces lacunes-là au ministère, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, absolument. Il y a plusieurs populations de phoques au Canada sur 3 océans et différentes espèces. Et il manquait de données sur qu'est-ce qu'étaient les populations totales de ces espèces-là dans certaines régions, mais aussi qu'est-ce qu'était l'impact de ces populations de phoques-là sur, par exemple, la biodiversité dans nos océans. Et il manque certaines informations. C'est peut-être pas... Il y a une question de priorité. Ils n'ont pas décidé que c'était une priorité, mais il y a aussi peut-être la façon comment aller chercher cette information-là qui est peut-être difficile, mais je ne crois pas que c'est impossible. Et c'est une des recommandations du comité qu'on aille chercher justement cette information-là et qu'on établisse un centre de recherche justement dans les prochains 6 mois.
Merci, thank you. And now, Bailey Howard, NTV.
Hi there, can you hear me? Oh, perfect. My question was, I followed along with when the senators were in Newfoundland and Labrador along the Bonavista Peninsula, and I was just wondering, from that perspective of being here on the East Coast and in Newfoundland and Labrador, how much did, the testimonies you heard from people and, some of the places you got to visit while you were in the province, influence some of the recommendations or give you insight for those recommendations?
Thank you, Bailey, for the question. As I touched on in my remarks, we heard from 60 witnesses, plus our visit to Newfoundland and Labrador. The concerns that were raised at our hearings in Newfoundland and Labrador played an important part in our recommendations, such as the fact that the people on the East Coast, in this particular case, feel like that Ottawa is not doing enough to assist this industry. We heard, that the future of the entire fishing industry depends greatly on what happens in the seal with the seal population. I mean, at one particular time we're being told there's 6 million seals. At another particular time, maybe 7 or 8. It fluctuates, and I realise it's not easy to count 7 or 8 million seals. But the knowledge that we do have is that they eat other species of fish, whether that's cod, whether it's crab, whether it's something else. As in the words of a former federal Minister of Fisheries and Oceans from Newfoundland and Labrador, Minister John Efford at the time, the seals are not eating Kentucky Fried Chicken. The effect that they're having on the ecosystem and the other fisheries was very prevalent in our discussions in Newfoundland and Labrador, and certainly was a basis for some of our recommendations in regards to the proper research, marketing of the products. Again, we heard from people in the craft industry here in Ottawa and in Newfoundland and Labrador that are having trouble, number one, accessing the product in order to develop their craft, but also, just as an example, we have an ever-increasing population of cruise ships coming to Newfoundland and Labrador. And they come into the harbour in St. John's. They have the opportunity to walk on the oldest street in North America, Water Street. They go into one of the operations where there's always in vogue furriers or some other furrier business there. And they love the products. They look at them, but they can't buy them because they can't bring them back into the United States when the ship goes into the harbour in New York. So these are the concerns, and that is why our recommendations, some of the recommendations that we brought forward, certainly had the influence of those recommendations certainly came from our visit to Newfoundland and Labrador.
Do you have a follow-up question?
No, thank you.
All right, then we have Bonnie Bellick, allnewfoundlandlabrador.com. Sorry. Bonnie, are you with us? In that case, I think we'll see if we can come back to her. Why don't we try Linda Swain, VOCM.
Craig, maybe go with the raise hands.
Okay. Thank you. There are no other raised hands. Oh. There are no other raised hands.
Well, I have...
unless Isabelle.
Isabelle's coming.
D'accord. Isabelle Lavose, question supplémentaire?
Ça va, merci beaucoup.
Doesn't want me.
Any other questions in the room? All right, a long way to the conclusion. Merci beaucoup, Miigwech. Thank you very much. That's all the questions we have for today, I believe.
Thank you.
Merci.
Yeah.